14:30 on December 15, 1944, Private First Class Dirk Vlug crouched behind a makeshift roadblock on the Ormik Road near Lemon Lee, his eyes tracking 5 Japanese Type 95 light tanks advancing toward his position with their 37mm guns blazing. He was 27, had spent 3 years in uniform, and had never destroyed a single tank. The Japanese had dispatched 5 Type 95 Hago tanks, carrying a total of 15 crewmen, to smash through the American roadblock controlling the only remaining supply route to Ormik Bay. Vlug's 126th Infantry Regiment had been engaged on Lee since mid-November, and the 32nd Infantry Division had earned its nickname, the Red Arrow Division, through relentless combat across New Guinea, where men fought in dense jungle with visibility reduced to 10 yards and where disease killed as many soldiers as bullets. But Lee presented a different challenge. The Japanese no longer retreated into the forest. They were defending the Ormik Valley with every resource remaining. The roadblock Vlugman straddled Highway 2, the primary artery linking the mountains to Ormik Bay on the western coast, and 8 days earlier, the 77th Infantry Division had made an amphibious landing just 3.5 miles from Ormik City. The Japanese were now trapped. Their sole escape route, their only resupply line, ran through this road, and Vlug's mission was to ensure nothing got through. The problem was the tanks. In late 1944, American bazookas were the M9 or M9A1 models, 2.36-inch rocket launchers weighing 15 pounds that broke into 2 sections for transport by paratroopers. Each rocket carried a shaped-charge warhead capable of penetrating up to 4 inches of armor at 100 yards. Designed to counter German armor, the weapon was effective against Japanese Type 95s because their plating was thin, 14 mm at the front, 6 on the sides. Doctrine required a 2-man team, 1 soldier to load, 1 to aim and fire. Under ideal conditions, the rate of fire was 6 rounds per minute, and standard practice called for firing from a covered position with infantry support. The Japanese Type 95 Hago light tank weighed 7.5 tons, could reach 28 miles per hour on roads, and was armed with a single 37mm Type 94 tank gun and 2 7.7mm Type 97 machine guns. Each tank carried a 3-man crew, a commander gunner in the turret, a driver in the hull, and a hull gunner operating the forward machine gun. 5 tanks meant 15 Japanese soldiers and 17 weapons targeting anyone who tried to stop them. Since December 7, the 32nd Division had been grinding forward along the Ormik Road, and in 5 days, the 126th and 127th Infantry Regiments had advanced less than a mile through dense rainforest, measuring progress in mere yards. Casualties mounted, companies dwindled to a single officer and 85 men, and now 5 Japanese tanks were rolling directly toward the roadblock held by Vlug and his squad. If you want to see how Vlug stopped 5 armored vehicles with just 6 rockets, please hit the like button to help share more forgotten World War II stories, and subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Vlug. The lead Type 95 was 400 yards away when he made his decision. He grabbed the M9 bazooka leaning against the sandbags of the roadblock and inspected it. The 2 sections were connected, the magneto firing system functional. He picked up the canvas bag containing 6 M6A3 rockets, each weighing 3.4 pounds and 20 inches long, each fitted with a shaped charge warhead. No loader, no supporting infantry, no covering fire, just 1 private first class, a bazooka, 6 rockets, and a Colt M19 11.45 caliber pistol on his hip facing 5 tanks mounting 37mm guns and 10 machine guns. The Japanese tank commanders had yet to spot him. The roadblock sat on a slight curve of Highway 2, thick vegetation lining both sides, visibility around 300 yards. The Type 95s advanced in column along the road, turrets scanning left and right for American positions. Vlug stepped from behind the sandbags and began walking toward the approaching tanks. The lead tank closed to 350 yards when its commander noticed movement and swung the turret, 37mm gun locking onto Vlug. Machine gun fire erupted, tracers zipped past his head, dirt sprayed around his boots, yet he continued forward. Loading a bazooka solo violated every army manual. The weapon was designed for 2 men, requiring precise coordination. The loader removed a rocket from its container, checked the propellant, inserted it into the launch tube seated against the electrical contact, attached the ignition wire, and tapped the gunner's helmet to signal readiness. Vlug had no loader, no one to tap a helmet. He was executing all steps alone while advancing on 5 actively firing tanks. The bazooka weighed 15 pounds, each rocket added 3.4 pounds. He could not stabilize the launcher with one hand while loading with the other. Standard doctrine advised kneeling or lying prone to brace against the ground, but kneeling meant halting, and stopping would make him an easier target. He pressed forward, closing the distance into effective range. At 200 yards, he paused, knelt, braced the bazooka across his left thigh, and withdrew an M6A3 rocket from the bag. The olive-drab shaped charge warhead was intact, the propellant sticks were undamaged, and he slid the rocket into the rear of the tube until it clicked into place, then connected the wire to the breech contact and armed the electrical firing system. Machine gun fire was constant now, and the lead tank's hull gunner was firing his 7.7mm Type 97 in sustained bursts, bullets snapping through the air 6 inches above Vlug's head. The gunner was aiming high, unable to depress the hull-mounted weapon enough to hit a kneeling target at that range. Vlug lifted the bazooka onto his right shoulder, looked through the General Electric T-43 aperture sight, rotated the ranging dial to 200 yards, and aligned the reticle with the front blade sight as the lead Type 95 filled his field of view. 14 millimeters of frontal armor stood between him and the crew, but the shaped charge could penetrate 4 inches of steel. He squeezed the trigger. The magneto fired, electrical current ignited the propellant, and the rocket motor burned out inside the tube in 0.04 seconds, producing zero backblast because the propellant was fully consumed before the rocket exited. The M6A3 streaked downrange at 265 feet per second and struck the tank, where the shaped charge detonated on contact with the frontal armor. A copper jet punched through the 14mm plate. The temperature inside the tank soared to 3,000 degrees, the propellant charges for the 37mm gun ignited, and a secondary explosion followed. The turret lifted 6 inches and settled back at an angle as black smoke poured from every opening. 3 crewmen were dead. 4 tanks remained. 5 rockets were left. The second Type 95 was already maneuvering as its driver saw the lead tank burning and an American soldier kneeling in the road with a rocket launcher, made a decision, and brought the tank to a halt with the engine still running. The turret hatch opened and the tank commander emerged first, climbing onto the turret, followed by the driver through his forward hatch and then the hull gunner. 3 Japanese soldiers abandoned their armored vehicle, carrying Type 99 rifles and advancing toward Vlug on foot. Tank crews had been trained to fight as infantry if their vehicles were disabled. Standard Japanese doctrine called for abandoning the tank and attacking the enemy with small arms, dying in combat rather than burning inside steel coffins. Vlug was still kneeling, the bazooka was empty, and the canvas bag with 5 remaining rockets lay on the ground 3 feet to his left. Loading another rocket would take 20 seconds. The Japanese soldiers were 60 yards away and closing fast. He reached for his pistol. The Colt M1911 was standard issue for American soldiers in the Pacific Theater, .45 caliber, a 7-round magazine plus 1 in the chamber, an effective range of 50 yards against man-sized targets, and a loaded weight of 2.44 pounds. John Browning's 1911 design had proven its stopping power over 33 years of American military service. Vlug drew the pistol from his hip holster, thumbed off the safety, and raised the weapon in a two-handed grip as the 3 Japanese soldiers closed to 50 yards, running forward with rifles not yet shouldered. He fired. Once, the lead soldier dropped, center mass hit. The other 2 soldiers stopped, looked at their fallen comrade, looked at the American kneeling in the road with a smoking pistol, made a calculation. The Type 95 was armored, the road was not. They turned and ran back toward their tank. Vlug holstered the pistol, reached for another rocket, slid it into the bazooka's breech, connected the ignition wire. The 2 surviving Japanese crew members were climbing back into their tank, hull gunner disappearing into the forward hatch, driver scrambling for his position. They were going to button up and resume firing. Vlug didn't give them time. He shouldered the weapon, aimed. The Type 95 was stationary, engine idling, range 180 yard. The driver's hatch was still open. Vlug adjusted his aim point, fired. The rocket entered through the open driver's hatch, detonated inside the crew compartment. Shaped charge jet in an enclosed space. Both remaining crew members killed instantly. Ammunition storage ignited. The Type 95's turret blew off completely, landed 12 feet from the burning hole. 2 tanks destroyed, 4 rockets remaining, 3 tanks still advancing. The third Type 95 was 250 yards behind the second. The commander had watched both lead tanks get destroyed in under 90 seconds. He was making different decisions. The turret was traversing. The 37mm gun was elevating. The commander wasn't trying to machine gun an American soldier anymore. He was preparing to fire high explosive. A 37mm high explosive shell weighed 1.54 pounds, muzzle velocity 2000 ft per second. Lethal radius against exposed infantry 20 yard. The Type 95 carried 120 rounds of mixed ammunition, high explosive, armor piercing. The commander had switched to high explosive because he wasn't fighting another tank. He was fighting one man in the open. Vlug was reloading. Third rocket sliding into the tube. Wire connecting to the breech. His hands weren't shaking, but they should have been. He just killed 5 Japanese soldiers and destroyed 2 armored vehicles in less than 2 minutes. Adrenaline should have made him fumble. Combat stress should have slowed him down. Instead, he was faster. The bazooka came up. Sight picture acquired. Range 250 yards. The Type 95's gun was almost level. 3 more seconds and the 37mm would fire. Vug fired first. Direct hit on the turret face. The shaped charge penetrated. Commander killed. Gunner killed. The driver tried to reverse. Tank lurched backward 10 feet before the engine seized. Fire spreading through the crew compartment. Third tank destroyed. 3 rockets left, 2 tanks remaining. But the 4th and 5th Type 95s weren't advancing in column anymore. They were maneuvering, splitting up. The 4th tank was moving left off the road into the vegetation. The 5th tank was moving right. They were trying to flank him, attack from 2 directions simultaneously. Force him to choose which tank to engage first. The other would kill him. Standard Japanese armor doctrine when facing anti-tank weapons. Spread out. Divide the enemy's fire. Overwhelmed through angles. Vlug was standing in the middle of Highway 2. Open ground, no cover within 50 yards. 2 Japanese tanks were circling to his left and right. 3 rockets remaining. Mathematics said he could destroy both tanks if his accuracy remained perfect. Reality said 1 tank would kill him before he could reload the 3rd time. He started walking toward the 4th tank. The 4th Type 95 was maneuvering through vegetation 20 yards off the left side of Highway 2. Thick jungle growth limited its speed to maybe 10 miles per hour. The driver was trying to circle behind Vlug's position, get a flanking shot. The tank suspension was designed by Army Officer Tomio Harada. Bell crank scissor system. 2 paired bogie wheels per side. On coil springs mounted horizontally outside the hull. Good mobility on rough terrain, but the system had problems. Tendency to pitch on uneven ground. The Type 95 was bouncing through jungle undergrowth. Turret rocking. Gun barrel wavering. Not a stable firing platform. Vlug walked directly toward it. Closing. Distance 40 yards, 30 yards. The hull gunner opened fire. 7.7mm rounds. Cutting through vegetation. Aiming was difficult. The tank was moving. Vug was moving. Bullets went wide. 25 yards. Vug stopped. Loaded his 4th rocket. The Type 95 was turning, trying to bring the 37mm gun to bear. The turret traverse was manual. Hand cranked slow. The commander was screaming at his gunner to traverse faster. Vlug could see the turret moving. Could calculate the time. 3 more seconds and the gun would be aimed at him. He went prone. Set the bazooka across a fallen log for stability. Aimed at the tank's sidearm. 6mm thick. The shaped charge would penetrate easily. Range 25 yards, point blank. The turret was almost aligned. Vug fired. The rocket hit the Type 95's left side below the turret ring. Penetration. The copper jet cut through ammunition storage. Every 37mm round in the ready rack detonated simultaneously. The tank's hull split open. Turret flew 15 feet into the air. Crew dead before they could register what happened. 4 tanks destroyed. 2 rockets remaining. 1 tank left. The 5th Type 95 was 300 yards to the right, moving through vegetation on the opposite side of Highway 2. The commander had watched Vlug destroy 4 tanks in under 4 minutes. Had watched an American soldier walk toward Japanese armor, firing a rocket launcher alone. Had watched every tactical decision his fellow tank commanders made result in burning steel coffins. This commander made a different choice. The Type 95 stopped moving. Engine shut down. Going silent, trying to disappear into the jungle vegetation camouflage. The Japanese tankers had been trained in concealment. The Hago's low profile helped. 7 feet 2 inches in tall. Jungle undergrowth was dense enough to hide a stationary tank if the crew didn't move. Vlug stood up, scanned the vegetation. The jungle was quiet. No engine noise, no movement. The 5th tank was out there somewhere, but finding it would take time. Time meant the tank crew could prepare, could set up an ambush, could wait for Vlug to walk past and shoot him in the back. He started walking along the right side of Highway 2, moving parallel to where he'd last seen the 5th tank, eye scanning, looking for any sign. Broken branches, crushed undergrowth, exhaust smoke, nothing. 50-yard, 100-yard. The jungle vegetation was 8 foot tall. Visibility maybe 30-yard into the treein. The Type 95 could be anywhere within a 200 yards radius. Vlug had 2 rockets left. If he missed or if the tank crew ambushed him from concealment, he was dead. 150 yards down the road. Still nothing. The jungle was completely silent. No birds, no insects. Combat had driven every living thing into hiding. Just the sound of Vlug's boots on the dirt road, his breathing, the weight of the bazooka on his shoulder. 200 yards movement. 30 yards into the vegetation. The Type 95's commander had made a mistake. He'd positioned his tank facing away from the road. Thought he could hide the vehicle's exhaust. Didn't realize the turret's rear-mounted machine gun was visible above the undergrowth. 7.7mm Type 97 barrel pointing at the sky. Unmistakable silhouette. Vlug moved off the road into the jungle, circling. The Type 95 crew didn't know he'd spotted them. They were waiting, listening, trying to hear American movement on the road. Didn't hear Vlug approaching from their flank through the undergrowth 20 yards from the tank. Vlug could see the full vehicle. Now, camouflage position was actually good. Hull partially concealed behind a large tree. Turret covered by overhanging branches. If Vlug had walked past on the road, he might have missed it, but he hadn't walked past. He loaded his 5th rocket, aimed at the tank's rear armor, thinnest point, 12mm. Engine compartment, fuel tanks. One hit would kill the Type 95. His finger tightened on the trigger. The rocket left the tube at 14:38. 4 minutes and 20 seconds since Vlug had stepped out from behind the roadblock. The M6A3 struck the Type 95's rear armor at the engine compartment. Shake charge penetrated 12mm of steel. Copper jet ignited the Mitsubishi air-cooled diesel engine. Fuel lines ruptured. Fire spread into the crew compartment within seconds. The driver tried to escape. Forward hatch open. He got halfway out before smoke inhalation stopped him. The turret crew had no chance. Rear exit blocked by flames. Commander and gunner died inside their positions. 5th tank destroyed. Vlug stood in the jungle vegetation 20 yards from the burning Type 95. 1 rocket remaining in his bag. No targets left. He walked back to Highway 2. The road was littered with destroyed Japanese armor. 5 Type 95 light tanks burning in intervals along 300 yards of the Ormic Road. Black smoke columns rising into the afternoon sky, visible 4 miles. Other soldiers from the 126th Infantry Regiment were emerging from their positions. They'd watched the entire engagement from the roadblock, had seen Vlug walk toward 5 tanks alone, had seen him destroy each vehicle methodically, had counted the rockets, had waited for him to die. He didn't die. Sergeant Leroy Johnson was the first to reach Vlug. Johnson had been manning a different section of the roadblock 400 yards north. He'd heard the gunfire, had seen the explosions, had run down Highway 2 expecting to find Vlug's body and 5 Japanese tanks rolling through American lines. Instead, he found Vlug standing in the road, bazooka over his shoulder, 5 destroyed tanks behind him, 1 unused rocket in the canvas bag. Other soldiers were moving forward now, checking the burning Type 95s, confirming all crew members were dead, counting the destroyed vehicles, taking photographs. One soldier had a Kodak 35 field camera. He photographed Vlug standing next to the destroyed tanks. Evidence proof. The photographs would later appear in Stars and Stripes newspaper. Private Victor Meinberg from the 129th Field Artillery Battalion had been with a forward observer party near the roadblock. He'd carried ammunition to other bazooka teams during the engagement, had watched Vlug's solo assault. Meinberg would later receive the Bronze Star for his actions that day. His citation would mention carrying ammunition under fire to rocket launcher operators who destroyed enemy tanks, but Vlug had done it alone. The 5 Japanese tank crews totaled 15 men, all dead. 3 killed when Vlug fired his pistol and they tried to dismount.
12 killed inside their vehicles when shape charges penetrated armor and ignited ammunition storage. Not one Japanese soldier survived. American casualties at the roadblock: 0.
The tactical situation
changed immediately. The Japanese had sent 5 tanks to break through the American roadblock on the Ormoc Road.
Those tanks were supposed to reach Ormoc Bay, supposed to help defend the Japanese supply line, supposed to prevent American forces from cutting off the 35th Army's escape route.
Instead, all 5 tanks were burning hulks blocking Highway 2. The road was impassable. Japanese reinforcements couldn't move south. American forces could advance. The 126th Infantry Regiment pushed forward that afternoon.
Met lighter resistance than expected because Japanese armor support had been
eliminated.
Word spread fast through the 32nd Division. A private first class had
destroyed 5 tanks alone. Battalion commanders didn't believe it at first, required confirmation, sent officers to inspect the site. The officers counted 5 destroyed Type 95s, interviewed witnesses, examined Vlug's bazooka, 5 rockets fired, 1 remaining. The
mathematics checked out, but destroying 5 tanks wasn't enough for Medal of Honor consideration.
The action had to
facilitate the battalion's mission, had to change the tactical situation significantly.
The destroyed tanks did both. They cleared the roadblock. They allowed the 126th Infantry to advance. They prevented Japanese armor from interfering with the 77th Division's assault on Ormoc City. The battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Ferdinand Char, began preparing the after-action report that afternoon. The report would detail Vlug's actions, would include witness statements, would include photographs, would recommend Vlug for the Medal of Honor. But the fighting on Lee wasn't over. 3 days later, on December 18th, the 77th Division captured Valencia Airfield 7 miles north of Ormoc. The 126th Infantry linked up with 77th Division elements. The Japanese 35th Army was cut off. Ore Valley was secured. Vlug kept fighting. The Battle of Leyte officially ended December 31, 1944.
46 days after Vlug's action on the
Ormoc Road. But the heaviest fighting came in those final 2 weeks of December when American forces closed the trap on the Japanese 35th Army.
The 32nd Division continued pushing south from
Lemon toward Valencia. The terrain was brutal. Dense rainforest. Visibility dropped to 20 yards.
Japanese defenders from the 1st Division had constructed defensive positions using heavy logs and
interconnecting trenches. Every position had to be cleared with flamethrowers, grenades, and bayonets. Daily advances measured in yards.
The 126th Infantry Regiment fought continuously from December 15 through December 25, 10 days of sustained combat.
No rest, no rotation.
Companies that started with 160 men were down to 80. Officers were
killed. Sergeants took command of platoon.
Corporals led squads.
But the roadblock held. The Japanese never broke
through on Highway 2 after December 15, never recaptured the stretch of road where Vlug had destroyed their
armor. The 32nd Division maintained control of the northern approach to Ormoc Valley. Japanese forces trapped south of the roadblock couldn't escape north, couldn't receive reinforcements, couldn't resupply. The 77th Infantry Division captured Ormoc City on December 10, 5 days before Vlug's engagement. But capturing the city wasn't enough. The Japanese still controlled Ormoc Valley, still had forces in the mountains, still had
escape routes through the western hills toward Palampon on the coast.
The roadblock on Highway 2 prevented that escape. On December 21, advanced elements of the 32nd Division linked up
with the 77th Division near Valencia. The junction point was 6 miles north of
Ormoc. American forces now controlled the entire Ormoc corridor from Breakneck Ridge in the north to Ormoc Bay in the south. Japanese 35th Army was cut in half. Forces east of Highway 2
were separated from forces west of the road. General Tomoyuki Yamashita had committed the Japanese defense of the Philippines to Leyte had reinforced the island with divisions from Luzon and Mindanao.
Had sent the 2nd Tank Division south had ordered the 35th Army to hold Ormoc Valley at all costs. The strategy failed. American control of Highway 2 made Japanese positions untenable. By December 25, organized Japanese resistance in Ormoc Valley collapsed. Surviving Japanese forces retreated into the mountains. Some units tried to escape west toward Palampan.
Most were caught in the mountains and destroyed piecemeal.
The Japanese lost
approximately 49,000 soldiers on Leyte, killed in action or died from disease
and starvation.
American casualties totaled 3,596 killed and 12,000 wounded.
The 32nd Division's losses were proportionally higher.
The division had entered combat on Leyte with approximately 12,000 men. By December 31, effective strength was down to 9,000, 3,000 casualties in 6
weeks of fighting. But Leyte was secured.
General Douglas MacArthur declared the island liberated on December 26. Japanese forces still remained in the mountains, but they no longer posed a
strategic threat. American engineers could build airfields.
Supply lines were secure.
Ports were operational.
Leyte became the staging base for the invasion of Luzon, scheduled for January 1945. The 32nd Division remained on Leyte through February, conducting mopping-up operations, hunting down isolated
Japanese units in the mountains, securing villages, clearing roads. The division wouldn't participate in the Luzon invasion.
Instead, they prepared for their next assignment in the southern Philippines.
Vlug stayed with the 126th Infantry Regiment, continued fighting through January and February. No special treatment for destroying 5 tanks.
He was still a private first class, still pulled guard duty, still
went on patrols.
The Medal of Honor recommendation was working its way through channels, but that process took
months.
The other soldiers in his company knew what he'd done, knew he'd walked toward 5 Japanese tanks alone, knew he'd saved the roadblock. Word spread through the regiment, then through the division.
Vlug became known, not famous, not celebrated, just known. The kind of soldier who did what needed to be done when it needed doing. The 32nd Division left in February 1945,
shipped to Mindanao for operations against Japanese forces in the southern Philippines.
Vlug went with them.
The 126th Infantry Regiment landed on Mindanao in March and fought through April, clearing Japanese defenders from
key terrain. The war in Europe ended May 8, Victory in Europe Day. American
forces in the Pacific knew their war wasn't over.
Japan still controlled territory across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Still had armies in China. Still defended the home islands with millions of soldiers. The invasion of Japan was scheduled for November. Casualty projections ranged from 500,000 to over 1 million American dead and wounded.
Vlug was scheduled to participate in that invasion, but in June 1945, the Army changed his orders. A telegram arrived at Division Headquarters on Mindanao. Private First Class Dirk J. Vlug was being reassigned.
Not to another combat unit, not to another island, he was going home.
The Medal of Honor recommendation had been approved. The paperwork had moved through channels for 6 months, from battalion commander to regimental commander to division commander, from the 32nd Division to 6th Army Headquarters, from 6th Army to General Douglas MacArthur's headquarters in Manila, and from Manila to the War Department in Washington. At each level, after-action reports were reviewed, witness statements examined, and photographs of 5 destroyed Japanese tanks studied. The recommendation reached the War Department in April 1945, which reviewed approximately 400 Medal of Honor nominations from the Pacific Theater during World War II. Only 81 were approved. The criteria were exacting. The action had to involve conspicuous gallantry above and beyond the call of duty, risk of life, and accomplishment of a significant military objective.
Vlug's actions met every requirement. On June 14, 1945, Vlug was honorably discharged from active duty at Fort Sheridan, Illinois.
His service record listed 3 years and 2 months of active service, including combat operations in New Guinea, Leyte, and Mindanao.
Awards were pending. The Medal of Honor.
The official notification arrived later that summer, and the award ceremony was scheduled in Washington, where President Harry S. Truman would personally present the medal on June 7, 1946, nearly 18 months after the Ormoc Road action.
Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, victory over Japan Day.
The invasion Vlug had been slated to participate in never occurred, as the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan to capitulate, ending the war without the million American casualties that had been projected. Vlug returned to Grand Rapids, Michigan, his hometown, a city of 176,000 and a center for furniture manufacturing. He had enlisted from Grand Rapids in April 1941, 3 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, leaving as a 24-year-old civilian and returning as a 28-year-old combat veteran. Grand Rapids had never produced a Medal of Honor recipient before, and the city prepared a celebration. Citizens contributed donations, raising enough money to build and furnish a house for Vlug to properly honor their first recipient. On June 7, 1946, Vlug stood in the White House as President Truman read the citation, which described the Ormic roadblock action: 5 enemy tanks, 6 rounds of ammunition, advancing alone under intense machine gun and 37mm fire, destroying the first tank, killing 1 enemy soldier with his pistol, and destroying 4 more tanks through sustained heroism in the face of superior forces. Private First Class Vlug had single-handedly destroyed 5 enemy tanks, greatly facilitating the successful completion of his battalion's mission. Truman placed the Medal of Honor around Vlug's neck, a light blue ribbon, bronze star surrounded by a wreath, representing the nation's highest military decoration. Vlug was one of 464 recipients from World War II, and one of 81 from the Pacific Theater. Back in Grand Rapids, the city held a parade. Thousands lined the streets as Vlug rode in an open car, waving to the crowd. The celebration lasted 3 days, and the community presented him with the keys to his new house. Then the attention stopped. Vlug wanted a normal life, to forget the war, to stop reliving burning tanks, dead Japanese soldiers, and the weight of a bazooka on his shoulder. He got a job with the United States Postal Service, delivering mail through Grand Rapids neighborhoods. No one shooting at him, no tanks trying to kill him, just a regular job for a man who wanted to be regular again. In May 1949, Dirk Vlug enlisted with the Michigan Army National Guard, serving part-time with weekend drills and annual training exercises. He rose to the rank of Master Sergeant, led training operations, and taught younger soldiers how to handle and fire rocket launchers, but never once mentioned that he had destroyed 5 tanks in 4 minutes. Instead, he focused on demonstrating proper loading techniques, accurate sighting, and firing from secure positions. He retired from the National Guard in January 1951, and with his combined active duty service, had devoted nearly a decade to his country. Afterward, he returned to delivering mail. For 40 years, Vlug walked the same Grand Rapids routes, carrying letters and parcels, chatting with neighbors about sports or the weather, living a life of quiet routine. People knew he was a Medal of Honor recipient. The local paper had run the story, but Vlug himself never spoke of the war, Leyte, or the intense moments advancing toward 5 Japanese tanks. He led a modest life, married, raising a family, attending church, paying taxes, mowing his lawn, the ordinary life the greatest generation returned home to construct, the life 400,000 Americans had fought and died to protect. The bazooka he had used on Ormic Road was never recovered, likely discarded after the battle or corroded by jungle humidity in the Philippines. The weapon that had destroyed 5 tanks in 4 minutes vanished, but the evidence remained. Black and white Kodak 35 photographs taken on December 15, 1944, showing Vlug standing beside the wreckage of the Type 95 tanks. Proof that a single soldier, armed with 6 rockets and a pistol, had halted a Japanese armored assault. Those images are preserved in the National Archives. Military historians study them. Armor specialists analyze the destroyed tanks, calculating how the shape charges penetrated Japanese plating, and how one man managed to defeat 5 armored vehicles alone. The answer is simpler than the technical analysis. Vlug saw what needed to be done, picked up a bazooka, walked toward the enemy, and completed his task. On June 25, 1996, Dirk Vlug passed away in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at the age of 79, 51 years and 10 days after that extraordinary day on Ormic Road. He was laid to rest in Greenwood Cemetery with full military honors. The Medal of Honor was displayed at his funeral, the light blue ribbon, the bronze medallion, the nation's highest decoration. His obituary in the Grand Rapids Press ran 3 paragraphs, noting his Medal of Honor, postal career, and family, but made no mention that he had saved a roadblock, secured the Ormic Valley, or enabled the American advance by halting Japanese tanks. Just 3 paragraphs for a man who had accomplished the impossible. The roadblock on Ormic Road is gone. Highway 2 has been repaved. The jungle has reclaimed the ground where 5 Type 95 tanks burned. No marker indicates where Vlug stood. No monument commemorates the action. Yet the event is preserved in documentation. Medal of Honor citations remain in the National Archives, witness statements filed in Army records, photographs archived, and after-action reports stored. Evidence survives even as the battlefield has disappeared. Vlug never sought recognition beyond what he earned. He never wrote memoirs, gave speeches, or toured schools recounting his heroism. He delivered mail, raised a family, and lived quietly, a form of heroism that does not require constant acknowledgement, the kind that speaks for itself. If this story resonated with you as it did with us, do us a favor, hit that like button. Every like signals YouTube to share this story with more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Every day, we recover forgotten stories from dusty archives, tales of soldiers who saved roadblocks with courage, resourcefulness, and bazookas. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches around the world. You are not just a viewer, you are helping preserve these memories. Tell us your location. Share if a family member served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping ensure Dirk Vlog's deeds do not fade into silence.